So today what I'm going to be doing is walking you through the intention setting and values identification challenge. But what's really exciting for me is that it is part of my book, 7 Days to Clarity, A Parent's Guide to Getting the Most Out of ABA. And while I'm really excited about sharing this book with you, I realize that a lot of the people who find me might not fit into this niche. But what's really cool is that these strategies are universal. The only reason I wrote this book in this way is because I wasn't actually quite thinking big enough for myself in my own career. So what I've decided to do is to break this down into 5 days to be able to jumpstart your values identification and intention setting so that you can use them for yourself, right? To be able to start creating the life you really want to lead using acceptance and commitment therapy and applied behavior analysis to get the long-lasting change. Now, before we get started, I want to explain a little bit about the strategy that I'm using and why you should put your effort here. So acceptance and commitment therapy and applied behavior analysis are data-driven, science-based strategies. So they're really meaningful and long-term. The other part is that I combine both the environmental aspects and the mindset aspects to be able to help you get the lasting change you need. So this is the beginning steps of that. And values, in my opinion, are always going to be the driver of why whatever you're doing, whatever you decide to work on, is worth it. So let's talk about what values are really fast. Values are like a moral compass. And let's keep going with the compass metaphor. So if you've got a big map out, right, and you're just kind of blindly following your path and you're kind of going step by step, you might have one of those old fold-out maps, just kind of following what you see next. You might have a rough plan of where you're going, and you might know like which freeway you're going to take to kind of get there. You've made a decision, but the rest of it's kind of, up in the air. So being able to figure out your values is going to be more like a GPS. So a value is something that is, right, it's a moral compass. It's a word like kindness or compassionate or community, communication, words like that. But what's also very interesting about these words is that you're never done becoming them. You're never going to get to the point where you're perfect at communication in every single aspect of the word, right? You're never going to get to a point where you are a perfect, like God-like embodiment of kindness, right? There's always going to be a new way that you can apply kindness or communication, or a new way that you can embody that, work with it, bring it to a different situation, apply and generalize all across the board. So before we even think about what values are and what your values are in particular, I want you to recognize the mechanism of values as being the journey, right? So values-based decision-making, and I would argue life in general, is about the road trip, right? The fun stuff that you do on the road trip. And the destination is cool, but what you're going to do is you're going to get to that destination and then you're going to set a new one and you're going to have to go road tripping again, right? Or, we're just following that car metaphor. So being able to figure out what the next trip is and being able to be cool with that is also part of it, right? Knowing that this is just one destination for you and that you have a lot of really cool things coming for you in the future. So that is kind of a really pleasant way of saying your values aren't achievable. But that doesn't make it not worth it, because you're going to be doing that anyway, right? If you are living as a human, you're choosing, you're making choices, and you're using them. So we might as well be purposeful and intentional and mindful about how we go about that. So that all brings me to getting into your values identification. And for me, values identification is the easiest way to go about it is by just taking a huge list, right? And narrowing it down for starters. So in my book, I have a big list here, and I'm going to read some off for you just to give you an idea of some of the words that values encompass. But I also am going to shove a workbook or a PDF or, something, I don't know, down below. So that way you can just download something and start narrowing it down. And what I'd like you to do is just go through, pick all the words that apply to you, and then narrow down to 10. An easy way to do that is to weed out the synonyms, because there'll be words that mean similar things. Just go with whatever means the most to you, and then don't overthink it. And the reason that I say weed it down to 10, even though that's probably going to be a tall order, is because if we get to the point where you have so many things that are important to you, nothing kind of gets attention and it doesn't really get moved towards. What's cool though is that you can always change your mind on what your values are. And because you have more than one value, you're already going to be kind of pushed and pulled in the direction of one that ends up compromising another. And I call that balance. And again, that plays into that idea that it's kind of unachievable. I get a lot of flack for that. I get a lot of people saying, well, I don't want to do the balance thing because it's not going to happen. It's unachievable. So why even try? I would argue that you're doing it anyway. You're moving towards what matters to you, right? And so if we can hone in on identifying that and using our creative, curious, intellectual mind to move towards them more fully, it's going to create more happiness, even though as you learn to do that, as you learn to balance that act a little bit, it's uncomfortable, right? Because when we step out of balance, when we move away from a value, even if it's in service of another value, it feels really uncomfortable. But what's really exciting is that when you get good at practicing values-based decision making, you can feel like you can notice that that is a guide, that uncomfortable feeling. Usually it's fear or anger or guilt or shame. Those are the big ones that come up. When you start noticing those, it means that there's something that needs attention. And when you get practice in this, it becomes almost exciting, and not in a masochistic kind of way, in like a, wow, I'm about to up level because I unearthed something that needed to be unearthed, and now I can look at it more fully and figure out how I want to move through it, away from it, or towards it, sometimes depending on the situation, in service of my values. So let me read you a few of the values so that you can get an idea. Love, openness, passion, hope, honesty, grace, dignity, empathy, ethical, equality, respect, responsibility, smart, silence, power, playfulness, originality, independence. All of these words are good words. None of these are ones where you'd be like, that's not so awesome. What's cool is that all of them, right, are ways that a person can live a life. And by identifying your top 10 values, which you can do over and over and over again, I do mine quarterly, you are figuring out what your beautiful, unique, full life is going to look like. And it's infectious to me. So once you get your top 10, I'm going to go ahead and post a second video so that way you can really spend some time thinking on it. The way that I kind of conceptualize this is that you would do it over 5 days. So dig into it, think about it, let it sit, let it resonate. And if, there's a value that's not on the big list that I include down below, go ahead and just add it. It's just all about who you are and what your unique life needs to be full. And there's no judgment around that. And that's something that we'll work on as well, is being able to notice when thoughts and judgments, feelings, emotions sometimes get in the way of our values. Like I said, sometimes those uncomfortable emotions don't always guide us. And there's a mechanism within our brain, within survival actually, that's to play that's to be at blame a little bit for that. But we'll get into it another day. Today, I just want you to get started with values and figuring out what your top 10 are. So go ahead and do that, and I'll see you on day 2 for values embodiment. Bye.